All right, man, here we go. We got a fun one today after some rather heavier, longer interviews we've done recently.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is a great topic and one that I hope spurs a lot of creativity with the listeners. This is one of my personal favorite things about CrossFit is that it allows for so much exploration, and you really do, just have the freedom to mix and match some of these elements and take things that you like and tweak them a little bit and see if you can make something you like even more. So that to me is just a lot of fun.
There are no rules. There are some rules, but no rules. There's some guiding principles, and then you've got a lot. You got a lot of wiggle room. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Here is the comment.
Wait, hold on. I've got something bubbling up that I heard from Jeff Martone.
Okay.
It was something a lot. I might butcher it, but here we go. It's
you have to say it in
methods
his
are many.
voice.
I can't do it justice. Methods are many, principles are few. Oh, and I can't remember the rest. Methods change, but principles never do. Something like that. So there you go.
Jeff, a poet.
Yeah.
So this was left on the show that we did, which was Very Not Random 131, pull-ups versus chin-ups. And somebody said, hey guys, great episode. Oh, because in that one, you talked about doing Fran, but maybe using rings for the pull-ups instead of using a bar for the pull-up, and how that would be quite a different experience. And this individual did it. And he said he actually linked a video to him doing Fran with the ring muscle-ups there. So you can go to
I love it.
episode 131, click on that link and watch him do it. Because I don't use social media, so hopefully this comes through okay. He basically says it was a totally different workout, nowhere close to his Fran PR, but in a good way, enjoyed it. And now he's going to be going forward, looking for more classic benchmarks to modify in a fun way. So maybe you guys could do an episode on your favorite benchmarks with a twist. And so here we are. Now, I should also say, which I always forget to do because I'm such a professional, go to verynotrandom.com, help support the show. Check out all the cycles we get there. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Okay, with that out of the way, let's dive into some fun benchmarks with a twist.
Yeah. And first of all, I think this is a really cool kind of piggyback on a conversation that we had with Dave Durante recently, which I believe when we're recording this, that interview should be up by the time people are hearing this one. So if you haven't, go back and listen to that. And one of the topics of conversation there is that when you're training, it is always a good idea that once you get proficient with something, look for a way to make it more challenging. That's what training is for. Training is your opportunity to try to stretch yourself a little bit and push for the next thing. And so this substitution, as simple as it may sound, okay, I'm going to do Fran, but with ring pull-ups, that's a great, easy example of taking something, saying, hey, I've got the basics down to a level of proficiency that I'm ready for the next step. How can I make this harder? And they're not falling off the deep end by trying to make every single element astronomically more difficult. It's just a little push in the right direction to make it that much more difficult. And I think that's such a great approach, generally speaking, for how to train. So just want to kind of tie things back to that for a second.
And I think something which we'll chat about here when we discuss a couple of specific examples is, while it might be easy for your brain right away to go to, how can I make this a bit more challenging, a bit more difficult? And that usually means, you're going to ring pull-ups from a bar, which is definitely more difficult. But there could be ways to make things more difficult by actually doing something which looks easier on paper. So for the example, it could be maybe let's chat Isabel, 30, let's say power snatches, 135 for men, 95 pounds for women. And maybe that's a pretty darn good workout for you. Wheelhouse puts a big smile on your face when it comes up. You get a blazing fast time, right? Well, yeah, you could do Isabel at 155 and 105 for sure. Or you could do full snatch Isabel for sure. Like you could play it with that. But you could also, instead of doing it at 135 for the men, do it at 95 pounds for the men and try to accomplish the same amount of work. And so if you run the numbers of 135 pounds times 30 reps, and you get that number, which is 4,050. You divide that by 95 pounds, that puts you at about 42.6 reps. So basically, if you want to do the same amount of work and you're awesome at Isabel, well, now instead of loading the bar with 135, load it to 95 and do 42 reps as fast as you can. And I bet even though it's quote unquote lighter, it's a unique challenge. It's a twist on a benchmark, and it's going to hit in a different way. And it's a fun new kind of play on that workout. So you can go heavier, but you can also spice it up in a different direction.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, where even without any modification, your approach can be radically different and create a different feeling and a different, slight training stimulus. And to piggyback on your example of Isabel, this is one I brought up in the past. It's like, okay, if you know that you are a quick single strategist when it comes to a workout like Isabel, okay, great. That might maximize your time as far as like how fast you can get it done. But what might be a great training effect for a day is to say, I am going to have the discipline to stick to a larger set structure no matter what. Come hell or high water, I do nothing less than a set of 5 touch and go, and see what happens. And again, for somebody who is very kind of convinced that they are only good at this one style of strategy, that's a great way to kind of branch out and develop some difference within the same workout.
You know, what is a benchmark workout? And so we're supposed to be talking about twists on benchmark workouts today. Well, this isn't even a twist. This is just a benchmark workout as is, but it's not one of the ones that comes up super frequently, but it will get people out of their comfort zone. Remember Gwen?
Oh yeah, great. Oh, that's a great.
So
great
if anyone's unfamiliar with Gwen, it's, I believe, 15-12-9. So 15-12-9 of unbroken has to be touch and go, clean and jerks. You choose the load, whatever you can think you can do. Now, please, don't blow your spine out of your anus, but whatever you think that you can do for while maintaining wonderful technique, as heavy as you can tolerate safely for a 15. Take all the rest that you need. Hold on for a 12, and then hold on for a 9. And that thing is a bruiser.
Oh, I love it. I remember vividly, this is probably 2007 or 8. It was at the original gym in Santa Cruz, the original CrossFit facility. There was a level 1 that was going down there. And at lunchtime, Max Mormont, who at the time was one of the most kind of prominent weightlifters in the community, he's still out there, shout out Max, doing his thing. And he's like, today's the day. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for 15 at 225. And
I remember this.
And I don't think he made it. I think he got 12 or 13 and didn't quite have the gas in the tank for the last 2. But at that point in time, to see that happen was absolutely mind-blowing. And what's even more mind-blowing is now I think that there's some, absolute savages out there in the competitive realm that
you got to put a timestamp on when that was.
Yeah, that's probably maybe not routine, but I think there's plenty of people that could do it. But back then, I mean, my goodness, that's just
sticking with Gwen. Not to derail the show, now I'm going to probably. I'm so sorry. I'm going to mess up the name, the load, and the year that it happened. So maybe you can help me. But it's Gwen. Was there her name Sarah Hopping Estrella?
Yeah.
Didn't years ago? Isn't there a video of her doing Gwen at 155 or something like that, which was mind-boggling at the time, and I can't remember, but it was a while ago.
Yeah, well, Sarah was an amazing athlete. I mean, she had a very successful track and field career. She was a thrower, so very powerful athlete. She's still an amazing CrossFitter. She's in Colorado now, and she's phenomenal.
Yeah. So Gwen, I might have to. You know what? I'm going to blow the dust off that one. So
yeah, that's a rough one. And
be prepared, everybody.
Talking about stories of athletic feats that I will never achieve.
Okay.
I was actually recently able to hang out with Chad Vaughn a little bit at Power Monkey, and he was saying that I forget who he said he did it with, but he did Grace, so 30 clean and jerks for time at 3:15.
Oh,
at which I mean, that was very confronting because he and I are in the same weight class. I mean, he is not a large individual, and
is that crazy?
I told him I'm still working on rep 1 of that. That'd be a significant lifetime PR to get the first rep. So
that's absolutely amazing. Well, you mentioned Grace. Let's chat about ways that we could push Grace around or manipulate that a little bit.
Yeah, well, before we do that, I am kind of curious how you tackled this question because when I started thinking about this, yes, there were some workouts that were kind of twists on classic benchmarks that I'm like, oh, that was a fun one. I remember, doing that. But I started to think about it a little bit more, I guess, from a holistic standpoint of what are the things that I would look to do to modify a benchmark to kind of give it that twist. And so I started to take that approach a little bit more of like categorically, what do I do to kind of push that thing just a little bit? So instead of having like specific examples, I thought of a couple of different buckets that might be good ways for people to explore on their own.
Okay.
I'm curious what came to mind for you.
I scratched down some general concepts, but I scratched down some specifics just to give people like some actual like, and the specifics are, I guess, concepts that you could then apply to, like I chopped up Fran a few different ways, but you could take those concepts and chop up other workouts that way as well.
Okay, great. Well, I've got 3 and they kind of correspond to my buckets too. So you want to start there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So I'll give you one of my favorites. And I had the pleasure of being on one of the early main site videos doing this when I was a young man. I think it's still out there. And that was roaming Diane.
Yes, I have that written down.
Yeah, so it's 21:15.9, deadlifts at 225. And then I believe it was double the meters in a handstand walk as opposed to a handstand push-up. And so that was a really fun twist. I believe that was a Tony Budding.
I was going to say T-Bud was in that, wasn't he?
That's right, yeah. I think that was his idea. And again, at the time, walking on your hands was pretty exotic. I was lucky enough to have dabbled in that. So it was, for me, that was actually a strength. But yeah, to combine those two things was pretty fun and a great way to kind of shake up the routineness that handstand push-ups can become.
And didn't you guys do another variation of that, or was that Tony alone? Because I could have sworn that there was, unless my memory's wrong, that it was Tony Budding, and the 225-pound barbell remained. It was 21 deads, but then I thought he got it overhead and did a carry with it. Dropped it, 15 deads, overhead carry, dropped it, 9, overhead carry.
Yeah, I think you're right. As part of the series, Kelly Starrett did that with the overhead carry. I believe you're right.
Okay, yep.
Because I did the handstand push-up version. I remember that. And we used to mess around with a lot of overhead carries, but I did not do the overhead carry version of Diane.
So
but
there was an overhead. Yeah,
that's a great twist too.
A wonderful one as well. You're not going to get shortchanged with either one of those. But I had that written down because I remember that video of you doing that one.
Yeah, right on. Okay. Well, so that was my first one. What's another one from you?
I can give you just like, I'll give you a couple ideas of a couple ways that I've chopped up Fran, because you already mentioned Fran.
Okay.
So, there's, I would say, low-hanging fruit, right? Like you could keep the loading generally the same. You mentioned how you could change the pull-up bar, but you could do, kettlebells, thrusters in place of the barbell. You could do dumbbell thrusters. If you have the flexibility, which I do not, you can do thrusters with a sandbag and keep that overhead there as well. I mean, so you could change the implement, which would wildly change the workout, but keep it roughly the same. But you could also, I've also chopped up Fran where I went lighter. So I went 75 pounds on the barbell. And I remember doing this with Heber, Marsden, I think Miranda was there, at a gym in Scotts Valley that I can't remember the name of. I think it's like where the whole Fit Aid crew originally started and whatnot. But we did 75 pounds in the barbell for men, 55 for women, 30, 20, 10 for the thruster, paired with a 3-2-1 rope climb.
Oh, that's fun.
It was a great burner. And it was right in that window with peer pressure of everyone going, like nobody wanted to put the bar down and you were blitzing the rope climb. So that was a fun play on Fran. I've also done in the last couple of years something that it was one of those workouts you program like when you hate yourself. And it was, I think, at the regular loading, 15 thrusters and 15 pull-ups, like the worst part of Fran. You do that every 3 minutes for 5 cycles. So you blitz 15 and 15, the clock continues to run. When it hits 3 minutes, you blitz 15 and 15. And after 1 or 2, it ain't that bad. But sometime after like the third blitz, you're like, oh no, you do the fourth blitz and the last one's like a living hell. Like that was a good like interval style, just, keep yourself on a pace. I've done it like that.
Let me pause you there for a second because that dovetails so nicely into one of my favorites as well, which is an interval Helen. And so
I
I've done
had
this
that written down as well.
a couple of different, great minds, Pat.
Yeah.
I've done that one a couple of different ways. And there were some athletes in the past that I used to program for. I no longer do, due to my, involvement in the games and that. But
I'm curious to hear what you say, because I couldn't remember the time to launch every round. So I'm curious to hear what it was.
Well, so here's how I've done it. I've done it a couple different ways where I've said, okay, it's for total time, just like Helen. And you're going to do 3 intervals every 4 minutes. So one 400-meter run, 21 swings, 12 rest. And then at 4 minutes, you go again. At 8 minutes, you do your last round.
Yep.
And it's total working time. So that would be one way to do it.
That's
I've
nice.
also done it where it is 5 rounds, but with that same 4-minute start, so that you try to stay consistent at a greater volume. And then I've also done it where it becomes a little bit more progressive. So let's say, Pat, week 1, we do it with the 4-minute interval. And then 2 weeks later, we do it with a 3.5-minute interval. And then maybe a month from now, we do it at a 3-minute interval. And we see if you can still maintain that kind of output with a reduced rest. So it's some fun ways to kind of take something like that and just push that interval style.
What's so great about this topic and this conversation with you, because I had that written down, I had the 5-rounder going every blank minutes, and I couldn't remember what it was. I think it is every 4 minutes. My condolences to everybody in Linchpin. This is sparking my mind for Gwen. We got to get Gwen going. That 5-round version of Helen on the 4 minute. There's some great stuff out there. So
yep.
I've chopped up Fran to kind of interval style there as well. So 5 sets of 15 with rest in between each. And the goal was, modify this as needed, but the goal was to give yourself enough rest that ideally the 15 and the 15 would be unbroken every time. That was when I had it in my head. Now that doesn't have to be the case, et cetera, but it was supposed to be these short, sharp sprints, over and over again. I've also done it instead of 5 cycles of 15 and 15. I've done it as 3 intervals of 20 and 20 with 2 minutes rest between each. So you do 20 and 20 as fast as you can. You rest 2 minutes. 20 and 20 is now you've done a full Fran based on the second one. You rest 2 minutes, and that final 20 and 20 is a dog fight, and it might have been 3 minutes rest between each, but there's enough rest that once again, you're like, I think I can do this and I really don't want to. That's like the area that I wanted to be in. So I've played with Fran a bunch of different ways there, and it's always fun to do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So yeah, that's a lot of good variation there. So kind of the third one that I had that I really like is kind of combining elements from different benchmarks into its own beast. And one of my favorites, and it's been one of my favorites for years, this is a go-to for me. I call it Grindy. It's a combination of Grace and Cindy. And so there's a couple of different ways I've sliced it, but my favorite way is 10 clean and jerks at 135, 5 rounds of Cindy, 10 clean and jerks, 5 rounds, 10 clean and jerks. So effectively, it's a full Grace with 10 rounds of Cindy sandwiched in there. And what's nice about it is that the 10 clean and jerks are never so many reps that you're, tempted to go with really small sets. Like there's not so much there that you're scared of taking big bites. And then the same thing with the 5 rounds. 5 rounds of Cindy, if you're relatively fit, like that's not crazy for you to sustain a pretty high output. And then you're right back to the bar. So it's enough work that, there's significant challenge to it, but no single element of it is so difficult that you're tempted to slow down significantly. So it's a good one.
That's a great pairing. I have a love affair with Cindy. I think Cindy's such a beautiful, gorgeous workout. I really do. I think it's a masterpiece. And I've played with Cindy a lot. And I like every now and then, something we've done a bunch is, it's just still your 20-minute AMRAP. Nothing about Cindy is different, but each round starts with like 1 deadlift at 70%. That's it. So you do 1 heavy dead, round of Cindy. And the deads don't go up each time. They just stay at that. And so over the course of the workout, if you're getting 15 rounds, 18 rounds, like you pulled 15 deads to 18 deads at 70% of your 1 rep max. And as it goes on, you're pulling those deads after 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds of Cindy with your lats and back and posterior chain like lit up, and what felt like not so bad of a deadlift in round 1, 2, 3, and 4 like catches up with you. And there is something interesting about touching a heavy load for just a short period of time and then doing gymnastics work, like what it does to your heart rate, and it can't come back down. Like it's really, there's a beautiful part there. And while you've got me on the Cindy thing, I'm going to mess this up. I could go back and look at what the exact rounds were, but I didn't look at it for this show. I did some pairing in the past that was disgusting of Cindy with Randy.
Okay.
And I think I did something like 5 rounds for time of 15 power snatch at 75 or 55. And I think 3 rounds of Cindy. I think it was 5 rounds of 15 power snatch, 3 rounds of Cindy or something like that. And it was one of those ones where you're like, such a light barbell, this is going to be nothing. And 3 rounds of Cindy, like do that in my sleep. And the accumulation of what occurred when you went back to that light barbell was like, I'm hyperventilating and I cannot recover. Like what's happening here? Like there's some cool stuff to be done with Cindy for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it lends itself so well to that kind of combination effect that I love it. And I agree with your sentiment completely. I think it's just one of the all-time greats, both for what it is on its own, but what it can morph into. And I mean, that's one of those things that if you were to really just pursue that and pursue it honestly with great movement and attention to detail and trying to make it more difficult with harder variations as you got more skilled and more capacity, you could pursue that for a long time, almost exclusively, and your fitness would be robust. And it requires almost nothing as far as equipment and space and all of that. Like there's just a real elegance to that one.
There's some cool short, sharp ones you could do with Cindy as well, where if you think like 20 rounds of Cindy is a very good score. It's a very good score. And if you obviously that means that a round of Cindy is taking you about a minute, right? And so we've played with that before as well, where, okay, if a round of Cindy is taking about a minute, so 2 rounds would take 2 minutes. Let's say that's an average time for a 400, right? Like there could be a really nice, short, simple workout of 3 rounds for time, 400-meter run, 2 rounds of Cindy. That's it. And it's like this it's longer than Helen, obviously, but it's this thing where you don't ever think you're going to fail 2 rounds of Cindy, right? So the goal is that you need to get your tail out there and run a whole heck of a lot faster than you want to so that the runs hurt. And then when you come back in, you almost fear 2 little rounds of Cindy that didn't feel so bad. And then you're back out hyperventilating, but it's still over before you know it because it's only 3 rounds. It's a 402. So there's infinite ways to play with Cindy. Cindy's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And to back out and talk about it conceptually, that is one of my very favorite things is to take elements that I like and mash them together that create something new on its own, but it's kind of a shout out to the original pieces of it. I just love that. And I think there's endless combinations. And I'll take it one step further and say that I think that's a really safe way for people to begin programming on their own if they aren't that experienced, is to take these workouts that have been established as being effective and efficient and all the good things that you would want, take a look at what makes them that way, and then play with those elements and see how you can combine them with others, because that kind of takes away some of the blank slate problem of where do I start? How do I go from nothing to a good workout? Take some elements and see if you can combine them in a way that makes sense, and then look back and say, all right, did this achieve the effect I was looking for? Or did I, like making a recipe, did I spend a little bit too much focus on one ingredient? And in the next iteration, can I scale that back a little bit and hit the sweet spot?
This could be a 4-hour show. You get to this is actually the wrong topic for you and I to talk about because we both love it so much.
It's so funny because this morning we were chatting and we're like, oh, this one shouldn't be too long. I mean, famous last words, right?
And I'm such a scatterbrain. Going back to like the Diane thing, the overhead carry is so cool. The handstand walk so cool. Obviously, you could, but we didn't discuss. You could also play with the deadlift, right? Like you've done that at the games. If you have the implement, you do relatively the same load, but with a pair of heavy kettlebells or heavy dumbbells, that is going to feel like a wildly different deadlift. So you can play with that. But if you don't have that gear and you still just have your trusty barbell, you can stand on a 45-pound plate, make it a deficit. That's different. Or you could also not stand on the 45-pound plate, and instead of doing kind of like the opposite of what you recommended, where, hey, you've been a heavy single leaderboard hero, for a fast single leaderboard hero. And well, every time you do Diane, there's plenty of people that have a fast Diane by never letting go of the bar, right? Well, now what you're going to do is you're going to do dead stop every time instead of touch and go, where it's just a quick, release, regrip, lose tension, regrip tension. And it's 21 dead stops as quick as you safely can, 15 dead stops. That's an entirely different 225, I'm here to tell you.
So for sure. Yep. I'm a big fan of the dead stop. I think it's a very underutilized tool that unfortunately, I think CrossFit community at large has kind of pushed it by the wayside in the name of touch and go being faster and time is the only thing that matters. So yeah, dude, the touch and go, I love that. That's a great way to do it. I also love the deficit. I think a deficit pull is fantastic. And I get it, a standardized barbell plate makes sense if you're going to compete in lifting because, it has to be standard. You show up to a competition somewhere, that you want to be pulling from the same position, cool. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that it was the optimal training position. It's just the way it became standardized over time. And so there's no reason that you shouldn't experiment with differences in starting position, particularly on something like the deadlift. That's so much less technical than, like a clean, for example.
You want to go back into the Wayback Machine. I remember the first time, I never heard of a dead stop deadlift in my life. I mean, because I grew up on machines doing classic bodybuilding split sort of stuff. So I never deadlifted before CrossFit. And so I didn't know anything other than the touch and go. And the first time I heard somebody mention they had what I thought, because I was an idiot back then. I'm still an idiot, but more of an idiot back then.
A more experienced idiot.
More experienced idiot. They had what I thought was like a quote unquote, this is how dumb I was, a slow Diane time. I'm like, I don't know why you're bragging about your slow Diane time. It's so slow. Yeah. But they said that they had done dead stop deadlifts. And I was like, well, why would you do that? Like, I just didn't know what I didn't know. And it was in the CrossFit message board. It was Lynn Pitts.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Who's a barbell savage?
Yes. Yep. And I just didn't know how awesome what she was doing was. And I was like, why is this woman choosing to do a slower Diane? That doesn't make any sense. Again, I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Yep. So yeah, that's part of the fun to experiment. So, okay. I want to circle back around and talk about some of the buckets that we've explored and maybe not talked about explicitly. But so the first thing that we kind of brought up, if you're going to experiment with these kind of benchmark tweaks, is to take one element and make it harder. And I think that's the discipline if you're going to start modifying some of these things, is to stick to one element until you're comfortable with kind of knowing what you're going to get. Because I think the impetus for most people when they need to make something, quote, harder, is they go all in on every single element. And we've talked about this in the past, right? So let's say we have Fran, 21, 15, 9. Barbell's not too scary, not that heavy for most people. Pull-ups, again, once you get to a certain level of fitness, like that number of pull-ups isn't going to freak you out. Cool. So you look at that and you say, how do I make it harder? Okay, well, the barbell needs to be 135 pounds for sure, because heavier is always harder. And the pull-ups, that's kid stuff for me now. I think it should be bar muscle ups. And you know what? I think I like your idea of 30, 20, 10, adding just a little bit of a spicy rep scheme there, just a little bit more ratcheting up there. And before you know it, on their own, each one of those modifications is interesting and probably worth pursuing. But combined, now you have a bear of a workout, 30, 20, 10 of thrusters at 135 and bar muscle ups. That is a very different experience. That's like if you get that sub 20,
my goodness,
maybe that's a little aggressive, but you're looking at like a 15-minute hard effort for most normal people to achieve that kind of output. That is not at all the same thing that you started with. Mm-hmm. So be wary when you start to play around with these things. If you have these great ideas, keep the great ideas to single elements and play them out before you start combining multiple elements.
I've got now another, you've got your buckets. I've got another specific example.
Oh, yeah. Shoot.
With a hero workout that's beloved by all, DT. Right? So 155 in the bar for men, 105 for women.
I'll go on record saying I do not like DT.
Nor do I.
Hits me right in the skinny. I don't I don't like it.
5 rounds, 12 deadlifts, 9 hang power cleans, and 6 jerks. Infinite ways to do that, right? You can obviously think about how you could how you could scale it up. But a couple ways that haven't involved putting more weight on the bar that I like is depending upon, now, if you're a beast, there are people who can hang on to the bar for a full complete round, drop it, start the next round. That's amazing. Probably one of the most popular ways that people will do it is they'll do 11 out of the first 12 deads, do deadlift number 12, get 8 out of the 9 hang power cleans, drop it, pick it up, get that 9th hang power clean, go overhead for the 6 jerks. If you've done DT a few times, and that's kind of how you roll with 155, maybe try to find, getting back to your earlier point, what loading is it, if it's not 155 and 105, that you could hang on for one round of 12.96? Maybe it's 115, maybe it's 135, whatever it is, and make yourself have to do 5, and then take your rest after you drop it from overhead. But when you grab it again, the goal is, I'm going to do 12.96. Now, that's one way to do it. Another way I've seen it keeping the prescribed loading, and I got to give a shout out, I think this is Scott Panchek's idea, is he kept the 12.96, but each round began with 15 box jumps. And that's simple, right? Simple, not a big set. There's no loading. It hits you just enough in the lungs, but it also sucks a little bit of energy out of that hip drive. And now what seemed like already a heavy weight is a bit of a bear. So that's kind of a cool way to play with it as well.
Yep. I love it. And again, kind of bolsters my point. It's just one little element. It's nothing crazy. There's no wild change to it. It's just enough to push it where the experience is now that much more difficult. So yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, so then the second thing that I feel we both kind of hit on organically was to take an existing benchmark and create an interval structure around it. And I love that.
Love it.
I think intervals there's so much utility. They will forever be an efficient and effective way to train. There's so much variation you can play around with the work to rest ratio. You can have a lot of fun with that. And it really encourages you to go hard for a certain amount of time because you know that you've got some time to recover, and the expectation isn't this sustained output for a long period of time. So it's a fun way to kind of sneak in some intensity. And so I think we had some great examples in there, but that can be applied to almost any benchmark where you look at the elements and you say, okay, how can I take one round of this or certain pieces of it and create an interval structure around that? And I will say, when you're playing with that, if you're less experienced, don't be afraid of a greater rest period. It's okay to have full recovery because all that means is you're setting the next round up to be that much more intense. If anything, I would err on too much rest than not enough, because if you have not enough, you might as well not do it in the first place.
Yes. I'm curious to hear what your last one is, but going off of that, of what seemed to be too much rest for some people initially, and veterans, when they saw this the other day when I programmed it, they were like, "Oh,
it's a trap."
No, and it's the one that I texted you because I want you to suffer as well as a friend, and it was kind of a play off of Fran, and there's no right or wrong.
Hellenish.
Yeah. And there's no right or wrong way to do this, but this might help some programming nerds as to what my thought process was when I did this. So what I sent to you and had my community do was, it's 4 intervals. Each interval is for time, and you're going to rest 4 full minutes between each interval. It's the Fran loading with a barbell, but I'm going to put the pull-ups first. It's 12 weighted strict pull-ups, 15 thrusters, and then you take off and burn it down on a 400-meter run. So again, 12 weighted strict pull-ups, 15 thrusters at the Fran weight, burn it down on a 400-meter run. You rest 4 full minutes. And in my mind, the reason why I manipulated it that way was that's the reverse order of a classic Fran and those other Fran intervals that I gave, right? Where traditionally it's the thrusters first and then the pull-ups. Well, on this one, it's tough to put in a strict weighted movement in what you want to be a short and sharp interval style workout, because usually strict and weighted means it's going to take you a bit of time. So I put that element first because I knew if you chose a weight that you could get 12 unbroken, great. If you chose a weight that was 4 sets of 3, great. Like I used a 53-pound kettlebell for that one, and none of my pull-ups were unbroken. I think I did like 4s and 3s, to get to that.
That's stout.
It took whatever time it took, right? But it wasn't like burning it down. As soon as you finish, so you've got like a strength session that you can break up, built in with an interval style burn it down workout, because regardless of how long the pull-ups take you, it doesn't matter, because once you stop the pull-ups, now you're about to dance with the devil, because all you need to do is rip those. Doesn't matter if the pull-ups took you 3 minutes. Now you hop off, you rip 15 thrusters, and you take off for a 400-meter run like the devil is chasing you. And now you've combined a strength session for upper body gymnastics, which is take your time, break it up as needed, with I don't want you to break it up, I want you to go really fast element, and I'm going to give you ample rest so that you can be ready for the weighted pull-up again, and be ready to run hard again, and be ready for that pesky set of 15 again on the thrusters. And so that's why I put the weighted movement strict at first before the thrusters. That's why I wanted a big rest period. And so that was playing with benchmark workouts. That was playing with Fran, and that was playing with Helen, and kind of combining the two to get what I wanted out of it that day. So it touches on some things that you said, and man, the sky's the limit, really, which is what's so beautiful about programming as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I like that. It's almost like a buy-in, like you said, a strength buy-in before the more conditioning focused element, if you want to draw that line. Yeah, that's cool. That's really fun.
It was
and no, I have not done it yet. I took one look at that and I was like, I don't think that's on the docket this week.
It was, and what was really unique is I haven't done a lot of stuff exactly like that. Obviously some weighted pull-ups are demanding in your body, obviously. But like I said, you're breaking them up and taking whatever rest you need so that you don't hit failure. So while I didn't move quickly through the pull-ups, and my heart rate wasn't jacked. When I got to the thruster, my heart rate got jacked so much faster than it normally would have been, just because of the strict strength before. It was a really unique deal. So anyway, somebody wants to go for it.
Fun to play around with.
What's your last bucket?
My last bucket is the combo style. So first was, all right, take an element, just one, be disciplined and tweak that one element. Second bucket was to take an existing workout and intervalize it. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now. And then the third is to combine elements from different workouts that you already like. And so my Grindy example is my classic go-to for that. I love Grace. I love Cindy. How can I meaningfully put them together in a way that, doesn't, again, go so far off the deep end that it's just this behemoth that takes an hour and the intensity drops to almost nothing because it's just too aggressive. So, combining a couple elements. And again, I think the less is more approach is generally the right way to go about it. You had a great example with your Randy Cindy combo where each one of the elements is like, 15 snatches at 75, not so bad. Couple rounds of Cindy, not so bad. But repeated, that adds up to something pretty significant. So looking for those combinations, I think is a great way to approach a benchmark.
What was that Grace and Cindy combo, recorded so long ago with Kalipa and Spiel? I think it was at like CrossFit San Diego. And I think it was 155 on the bar.
And it was
it ascending? 1 to 10 remember. Or 10 down to 1?
I don't remember. People can go look it up. I'm sure it's still on the CrossFit channel somewhere. But the way they played it up, because at the time, both of them were very high level in the kind of CrossFit Games scene.
David and Goliath.
Yeah, and Kalipa was seen as this absolute barbell monster for good reason.
Right.
And Spieler was seen as this absolute bodyweight master for good reason. And the question was, okay, if we combine the elements, who comes out on top? It's kind of the classic CrossFit question, right? Like, who's got the most complete fitness? And so that was the combination that was kind of thrown at them for this video. And that was kind of the pitch of the video. It's like, all right, which of these they weren't specialty athletes, but they certainly had their own strengths and weaknesses. Which one of these guys is going to prevail when they're mixed up like that? So there's a fun video for sure.
Yeah, we won't spoil it. Go find it and watch it.
Honestly, I don't remember the outcomes. So.
I do. I remember the outcome. I was there. I saw it in real time.
Cool.
And I can't remember for the life of me whether it was 10 down to 1 on the clean and jerk with a round of Cindy after each, or 1 up to 10 with a round of Cindy after each. So I'd have to go back and check that out. But it was something around that rep scheme. It was a bruiser. So yeah, that's all I got, man.
Yeah, me too. That was fun. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
I
What a
did
great
too.
topic.
It was fantastic and fun. Well, and again, I like what you said with Martone, right? There's principles,
Mhm.
and playing with these workouts and manipulating them, you're still in keeping with these principles, and you might get it wrong every now and then. As a matter of fact, if you want to learn how to do this stuff,
Yeah,
you're
you will.
going to get it wrong for a
Hmm.
while. That's okay. Just learn from it, make some notes, improve, and you'll be on your way to just creating some really cool, beautiful, fun workouts. And especially if you've been at this game for a while, and you've got a 5-minute DT and you're just super fast, well, you got some other ways that you can play with it, or whatever it happens to be. So
Yep.
appreciate it, everybody. Yeah, keep the cool, fun questions coming in. We love them. So
Absolutely. And I would say, if you do get one of those tweaks that you make and it falls flat, all you have to do is ask yourself why. It's
mhm.
usually pretty evident when you go back and do the forensics and you look at it after seeing a bunch of people that have actually applied themselves to it. You can see pretty readily, you're like, oh, everybody bottlenecked at the 30 clean and jerks after 2 rounds of Cindy, or whatever it was. It
Mhm.
becomes glaringly obvious once you see some people or you yourself go through it where the sticking points are. And all you have to do is just modify. So no big deal.
So find this show, everybody, on the BTWB YouTube channel, and we want to hear cool ways that you've modified benchmark workouts. If you've come up with one, hey, throw it in there as well. Maybe it'll
Yeah.
get sticky, and you'll see it posted all around the world, and that'll be really
Hmm.
cool. If you've got different buckets or one that you would add to what myself and Adrian said, throw it in there as well, so we can all learn. Got an idea, topic, guest for a future show? Post it. We read those things, and we appreciate it. This is everyone else's show as much as it is mine and Adrian. And so it's our pleasure to connect with you each week. For Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we will see you next time.